welcome to the Great Work of Your Life interview series produced by Revealing Genius. Our guest today was my first executive coach. She is the CEO and founder of International Purpose LLC, a consulting firm and social enterprise that partners with organizations worldwide to guide leaders to evolve and modernize the mental model of how they operationalize their work. I love that. She also leads global small business groups called Purposeful Business Circles, PBC, of which I am a proud member, and it's based on her proprietary transformational methodology called 7 Evolutionary Tools. And they work. It fosters inclusive, sustainable economic growth. And you can find these tools in her book. Here it is. I hope folks can see this on the screen. Evolutionary Work. And the subtitle is beautiful. Unleashing Your Potential in Extraordinary Times. And what's special about her focus is she challenges outdated thinking in a very gentle but nurturing way and establishes new behaviors and actions for dynamic change to occur. And the core of her work involves 3 things. Listen to this. 1, mindset. It's the mindset and social skills of individuals toward impacting their self-perception and their worth. And number 2, exponentially growing and developing their work. I can attest. And number 3, becoming much more effective in their journey to self-reliance. And I think a real differentiator is she's worked throughout the US, but also around the world, Egypt, Afghanistan, Nigeria, training government staff. She's spoken at national, international conferences, and her 10-year goal is big. It's to develop purposeful business incubators in major regions of the world as a new paradigm of work. And this is a Patricia quote that feeds the pocketbook and the soul. So please welcome Patricia DiVecchio.
Thank you, Mary. That was lovely.
I am so excited to have you on the show. We go back. We go back a ways, yes?
Definitely go back quite a ways.
Oh my gosh. Well,
it would be interesting, Mary, to bring up how we reconnected, because I think that's a great story.
Absolutely. Gosh. So we met back in my 20s. I was running a medical marketing firm, was a young CEO, and my board very lovingly said that I needed an executive coach in order to take my business to the next level. So I interviewed 3 executive coaches, which was sort of novel at the time. It wasn't really that mainstream at that point, and it was kind of a no-brainer when we met, because
I didn't know you did that, Mary. I didn't know you interviewed 3 people.
Oh, I did. That was my requirement. Yeah, I had to interview 3 and I had to make a choice. So I did, because I was spending money. I was spending company money, and my board wanted to see where I was spending the money, which is great. Money well spent, by the way. So, I mean, I really credit you with helping me think. I think bigger is almost feels perfunctory. Like, you helped me to think in a whole new dimension. Like you helped me to think not just bigger, but more purposefully, if that makes sense.
Good.
So I ended up selling that company when I was 32, and that wasn't on my radar when I was 26, I think, when I met you. Growing exponentially, personally and professionally, was fantastic. And then, so I ended up selling my company. I went on to run another company and then became the CEO of another company. And then here we are all these years later. And by happenstance, there was a gentleman who was in one of your retreats. And I was in that retreat too. This was many years ago. He downloaded my online course. And he sent me this note saying, I really love your online course. Your name sounds really familiar. Do you know Patricia DiVecchio? And I said, oh my gosh, that was my first executive coach. And so we reconnected, and now I'm in your purposeful business circle.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't think there's any such thing, coincidence. Yes. Because
Totally.
all these years later now, I'm operating as an independent consultant, which is very, very different from running a small business or being the CEO of somebody else's company or running a large regional agency. It's a very different way of being.
Right.
And you're going to help me with that. And I'm thrilled, mostly thrilled we reconnected.
And it's funny, because when we did reconnect, we couldn't stop smiling.
I know. It's true.
Oh, great.
It's so
It
great.
can't
Oh my
stop
gosh.
smiling.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I still have notes from when we first started chatting back when I was in my 20s. Like
Right.
I still have those tools. They have served me well. So, thank you for that.
Oh, very welcome.
Absolutely. Yes, my pleasure. So, shall we get into questions? I know that our listeners are dying to know.
Yeah.
Patricia DiVecchio, what gives you energy and what drains your energy?
Right. My work definitely gives me energy. Every time I'm sitting down with a client or a group. Yesterday, I did a presentation for 65 people on mindfulness and meditation, and the hour went by so quickly, Mary. And it really turned out very, very well. So my work really feeds me. I always tell everyone that I'm student number one of what I do because I need to learn it as well. So I believe work is meant to teach us. If we see it that way, we can learn a lot. And I'm sure you have, Mary, over the years, learned a lot from the work that you do, and it makes you who you are today.
Most definitely. Yes, and it's a great
Yeah.
segue into the next series of questions is you offer quite a bit. You work with international development organizations, you work with small businesses, you work with individuals, you're a change agent, you're a strategic planner, you're a facilitator, you're a trainer, you're an executive coach. You do a lot of things
Right.
for your target market. What what do you love the most? And what do you like the least?
What I love the most is when I'm working overseas. I love learning about different cultures. They just fascinate me. And learning about people in different cultures. I believe, Mary, that every high school student in the US needs to go and travel and work overseas to really get to know how the world lives. We don't know that, you know. We don't know that, we are what, 5% the Western world, and the rest of the world lives very, very different than we do. And some positive, not so positive. But I learn so much when I'm traveling and working overseas. And I find people are so very grateful. They really, really appreciate your help and your perspective. And there's just respect, all the way around.
Recently, I started facilitating a course through Cornell University for women entrepreneurs in Afghanistan. And thank you for coaching me on how to approach that audience because I was a little shocked that the course was actually being offered to that audience and thrilled at the same time.
Mhm.
So, you've worked in Afghanistan, you have worked in Nigeria, you have worked in Egypt. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I'll start with Egypt. So I was there for 2.5 months. And my job, my assignment was to work with a small business development center in helping them redo their strategy. And they wanted to do something really different, and because they wanted to impact more people. So what we did was we used the 7 evolutionary tools that you mentioned. That's the core of everything I do. And I took them through those tools. And so when we met, we would go through an exercise in the workbook, and then we would talk about their strategic plan or their marketing plan, or their vision and their goals. But we would do it from the lens of the 7 evolutionary tools. And all of those tools are around expanding one's mindset, getting out of the past and into the future of choice, So we're looking at, what do you want to see in 3, 4 years? And in order to see that, how do you have to think and act today to enable that future? So I loved doing that work. And it was funny because we had an office in Cairo, the group I was working under, or with, I should say. It was a USAID contract, United States Agency for International Development. And there were other individuals working on different projects. So they would come to the office and they would every once in a while go out into the field. I mostly went out into the field because that's where the work is. That's where it originated. That's where the people are. And they would ask me, why don't you spend more time in the office? And that made no sense to me because when I'm in the office, I'm just I'm writing things up, of course. I'm sitting at my computer, but I want to be in the field. That's where I'm going to learn. That's where I'm going to make the largest impact. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I'm still connected with the core people there. We have a group on WhatsApp, and we talk about things like Ramadan and when that's going to happen. And yeah, I'm just sort of wired that way, Mary. I'm really wired that way. And the first time I went to a developing country, I call them that. I don't call them, well, you know, I look to call them emerging markets because that's really what they are. They are emerging markets. They have been around long before, we came, U.S. came into play. Should I share another example?
Yes, of course. Absolutely. Because it's funny. One of the reasons why I selected you of the three, all three were very strong. My board encouraged me. They said, you need to select someone who is going to possibly make you a little uncomfortable. You need to select someone who's going to challenge you, who is going to challenge you to stretch. Right. And hands down, you were the only one of the three that had a global mindset. Even then, I mean, even more so now. And really, because of you, I've traveled all over the world. At that point in time, global wasn't even on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
And you helped me put it there.
Right.
So, yes, please share another.
Good. So I'll share Afghanistan. So the work with Afghanistan actually was with the Norwegian ministry and Norwegian government and a university in Norway. And they were looking for someone to teach the professors at a 2-year college on coaching skills. So there's a 2-year college called NIAC in Afghanistan that takes students from the 150 agricultural high schools in the area and teaches them how to then teach others. So then they go back into the high schools and teach. And they realized that many of the students coming to the college, which was in Kabul, were stressed, were anxious because of everything happening in Afghanistan at the time. So they needed more than just teaching them to the curriculum of the school. They needed to help them with doing their homework and staying balanced, staying positive. So I taught them my coaching skills, and they were certified. And basically, it was the 7 evolutionary tools. And, I remember, Mary, this is sort of funny, that the first time we met, we were in this huge auditorium, and I was saying some things about the program. And I said that the program is a lot about asking questions because we come from the belief that everyone has their own answers. They just haven't been asked the questions to surface those answers. And I remember someone in the audience stood up and said, we don't ask questions. In our society, we don't ask questions. And I just remained silent. And the core people that did do the training learned to ask very good questions. And at the time, the dean of the school was a woman. Her name was Halida. And so Halida and I worked a lot together, just loved her. And I think the feeling was mutual. And at the end, as a part of our evaluation, we videotaped the people, mostly men, actually, because the most of the instructors were men. We videotaped them doing a coaching session, a live coaching session. And to be honest, Mary, Hollida and I, we cried so many times just to see these men asking really sensitive questions, to the students, especially the girls, because they had it harder because the girls traveled every day to school and traveled back home and were expected to do a lot of chores. So they were really struggling with doing their homework. Or the boys were able to stay on campus. They had dorms they could stay in, and at lunchtime you'd see them out there playing soccer, and meanwhile the girls are studying, doing their, homework in a way. But I went there twice. I'd go there again, but I'd like to wait until something happens with the Taliban. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's been a very long haul. But, as you mentioned, Mary, about talking about the course that you're doing with the women in Afghanistan, and that you talked to a colleague of mine, Sadiqa. And Sadiqa is also a part of our Purposeful Business Circle. And she she actually started the first community college in Kabul for women. So now she's having to change all of her courses so they're online, but they're going. And she's going to go back there for a month. She just finished her doctorate degree. And if you knew that, I think you might have known that.
She mentioned that on the call, yes, and just an enormous help. And the enormous help was really just understanding how they live, how people in Afghanistan live, and how they would access the internet, which can be challenging, and how sometimes they'll have issues with electricity, so their computers aren't charged. So just being like sensitive to things that we might take for granted.
Right. And just to add to that, Mary, I was there in one time I was there, it was winter there. They did not heat the building when we were there. And they could have heated it, but they didn't heat because they knew that the majority of the students had no heat at home. So we wore coats, we wore our coats. We tried to use like a Bunsen burner at one point, but that didn't work very well. Yeah. So you really do learn, you learn how life is there. And the people are lovely, always. I've always found in all of my travels that the people are lovely. They have a sense of humanity that we don't have here.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Lovely. Like every single person in my course is lovely, just lovely, wonderful human beings.
Yeah, exactly. A lot to learn from them.
Humbling. It's a very humbling experience. I'm honored. I'm honored to facilitate this course. It's really a privilege, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is.
Yes,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
So Patricia, you often credit your parents with encouraging you and your original thinking. When did you realize you knew what the great work of your life would be?
I was thinking about that, Mary. So my first career was teaching school, elementary ed. Did not work for me. I always say I lasted 5 years. And when I stopped, I was able to go to a group called Wider Opportunities for Women. This is here in the DC area. And I became a career advisor for them. It was all volunteer, so I wasn't getting paid. But I was fascinated. That was my first hint of my love for why people do what they do. Why does someone choose a career? Why does someone go on to a creative business? I started, feeling just really interested and intrigued, and I couldn't stay there though because it was it wasn't paying my bills. But it touched me. It touched me so much that I kept going back to that and back to that.
Did you ever have what I call a freak out moment or doubts about the great work of your life?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thought about, okay, McDonald's, here I come. Oh, yeah. Not so much lately, though. Not really, not for quite a few years. But I've been doing this for a long time, Mary, And I first got the hint of sort of a structure for it when I was at a workshop at a place called Omega Institute for Holistic Studies in New York. I don't know if you know about Omega.
Oh, very familiar. Yes, I have a dear friend who teaches there.
Oh, yeah. I used to go there every year for quite a few years. I haven't been there for a while. But I remember taking a workshop there. I don't even remember what it was on. But what I heard was that I was going to create this center called the Life Work Center. And at the time, I was teaching microcomputer software skills. And I thought, how on earth, am I going to move into that? And I just knew I would. I knew I would grow into it. And I did. I did, and I am, and still doing it today.
Yes, and I'm living proof of the output of your center. So you meet with a lot of very successful people, quote unquote, and I'll put that in air quotes, successful people. How do you define success?
That's a challenging one. That's a challenging. I know I define success when I can be in the present moment. When I'm here now and I'm just focused on this, for example, and being truly present, it is success for me. It's really success for me. And it feels so good, so good. Whenever I'm doing one of my purposeful business circles, I think I smile the whole time. I'm sure I do. Just smile the whole time. I'm just always so intrigued and enamored by the people that join in and what they're willing to share. And even the seminar I did yesterday, Mary, I find that if I'm vulnerable with the group, whoever the group is, they will be more vulnerable. People were raising their hands left and right, as I asked them, who has a meditation practice? How do you get up in the morning? What do you do first? Do you set any intentions for the day? And people just were contributing to it. And I know part of that is because of how I contribute to it, what I say first, talked about my morning ritual, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, so I don't think work is defined as, success is defined as dollars as much as impact and outcome, and long-term outcome. Mary, because you coined a term about impacting millions of people and generations to come. And you mentioned that recently when we reconnected, and now I'm using that all the time, that my goal is to impact millions and millions of people and generations to come, because my job is around creating a new paradigm around work that feeds the pocketbook and the soul. Because the current paradigm, which is still based on command and control, the job, employment, retirement, these structures that don't serve us, they don't allow us to evolve as we need to now. We live in a critical time in the evolution of who we are as human beings, and we need to evolve. And we are. We are evolving. You can't help but evolve, but we need to fast track it.
Yes, and well, credit where credit is due, Patricia. I still remember the day. I was actually sitting in your kitchen. You are of Italian descent. You made this amazing Italian dinner. The house just smelled so good, and you were encouraging me to give voice and words to my BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. And I would try, and you would say yes, and you must have asked question. I mean, you asked the right questions because it wasn't quite big enough, and you knew it. And then when I finally said the words, it took my breath away.
Mhm.
It was, I mean, I just couldn't believe I actually said it. I'm a farm girl from the middle of nowhere. Who am I to think those things, let alone say them out loud? But it was all about, if I could influence millions and generations to come to live a full and happy life, then I feel like I have lived. Like that
Right.
is my definition of success. And
Right.
that scared the horses, that that literally took my breath away. And I still have it written down from that day when you finally drug it out of me. It took a couple weeks, honestly, but we got there. And that was because of you asking the right questions.
Yeah. And it was just sitting in you, Mary. It was seeping in you. And yeah, it was wonderful. I remember that moment. It was wonderful.
Yes, I do too.
Uh-huh.
So if you had to do it all over again, would you change anything?
Not really. Not really. I mean, everything that I've done and has happened in life has gotten me here. Uh, and I know I need to be here uh, because to me, life is about learning and that I'm a student of life. That's my number one job, really, is to be a student of life and to learn from life and learn from work and learn from others and look at how do I incorporate those things in me in a way that has me evolve, has me move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think a lot of people know the hierarchy, and that top one is around self-actualization. And there's been some adjustments made to that ladder. And the one higher than that is called transcendence, where you're helping others actualize who they are and what they do. And that's our job, Mary. That's your job. That's my job now, is to help others actualize. Uh, and what comes to mind is that, some are willing and some aren't to actualize. And you want to work with a great quote from a TED Talk is to work with those who believe what you believe. Isn't that wonderful?
That is wonderful.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And I figured that would be the answer to your question. If you had to do it over again, would you change anything? No. This next question I'm really curious about. So I have an idea of the answer, but I'd love to hear it in your words. Where have you spent 10,000 hours honing your superpower?
With individuals all over the place. What comes to mind is I used to belong to an organization called the European Women's Management Development Network. And I got involved with that through a friend of mine, Gun, who lives in Sweden. And I've gone to their conferences, spoke at their conferences. At one of the conferences, I was speaking, and a woman in the audience, Mona, who's now a very dear friend of mine, lives in Frankfurt from Sweden originally. She said, "Can you come back and do a workshop for us?" And I said, "I'd love to." So I came back for 5 years to Frankfurt and did workshops for women from different European countries. And I believe that you know your best when it doesn't take any thinking. Because, see, you have to get away from your mind when you do this work. You don't think about it. If I start thinking about it, then I'm going down the wrong hill. I listen for what needs to happen next. And it's very comforting to know that all you have to do is listen and it'll happen. Listening does take a little practice here, but
Definitely. Is there anything you wish you were better at?
selling my services, to be honest, Mary. And luckily, I am working with a wonderful colleague friend whom you know, Anita Brattina, who is mentoring, coaching me, and I finally got it. After all of these years, I now know how to best sell my services, and I'm very excited, and I'm very grateful to Anita for helping me with this. And as you know, Anita is from Pittsburgh, and you know her and met her years ago as well. Wrote a book called The Diary of a Small Business Owner, has created and sold $1 million businesses, and sees her purpose as helping others make money and helping others bring their work, you know, to a larger market. And she's very, very, very generous with her time and how she helps. And yeah, I'm very grateful for Anita.
Yes, love Anita Bertina. As a matter of fact, just spoke with her last week. As a matter of fact, I consider her to be a mentor and a friend and an inspiration. Really, she was one of my first inspirations when I was a young CEO. I remember hearing her speak at a conference about work-life balance, and she really triggered me to think about success as not just driving the most top line revenue. It's really about it's really about like you say, having that balance in life.
Right. And I
Yeah.
remember you telling me that at that time she had one child she adopted from Russia. And then before you knew it, she had four. So she adopted four children from Russia. And I remember her
Amazing.
telling me once that when she was at work, she was worrying about the kids. And when she was home, she was worrying about work until she, you know, got that balance she needed.
Yeah. Yeah. She did it. She did it. Yeah. She's the model.
You beautifully.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Is there this next question is a page from Oprah's magazine. On the last page of her magazine, she would always write about what do you know about yourself to be absolutely true. She would write about herself. So, what do you know, Patricia DiVecchio, about yourself to be absolutely true?
That what I do is my purpose. What I do is my purpose. And I don't know if I ever told you this story, Mary, but I always wondered, you know, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I always wondered how on earth did a priest or a nun get called to the church until I was called to this work. It was a very uncanny kind of feeling. I said, oh, that's what that feels like, that calling feeling. And it doesn't mean I haven't had doubts, and every day I have doubts. But this is my life. I'm going to be doing it until I transition into wherever. And I always say that the form is going to change over time. And that I want to right now bring more people on board and teach them and train them to do what I do. Because I am creating these purposeful business incubators in major regions of the world, because there are never going to be enough jobs for all the millions and millions and millions of youth and women in emerging markets. Never, ever. We need a new model of how to create work from the inside out.
We need the PBCs for sure. For sure.
Yep.
Yes. This next question is a fun one. And I mean, we know each other pretty well. And I'm not sure I know the answer to this one. So the question is, what would people be surprised to know about you?
That I'm not always confident. I really am not always confident that I can fall into this not enough place or this imposter syndrome that you hear about. Yeah, that and I think that's me being human. I definitely am human. And that humanity, I believe, also helps me in my work, because we need more humanity in our work. You know, we need people to tell the truth. is if I'm in a PBC and I'm saying, I'm not real confident about something, then it encourages others to do the same. And then we can talk about it. We can talk about it. We can work at it. We can give each other some tips. We can encourage each other. We can email each other. We become a community. We become more of a community because we've been vulnerable. And that's a definite part of what the PBCs are about. It's about being your vulnerable self.
Yeah, how interesting. I think if I could give my younger self advice when we were working together in my 20s, I think I would encourage her to be more confident, to really own
Right.
what I was doing. I was constantly doubting myself. And I think that really held me back, which I think is why my board said, you're in your own way. You need to get out of your own way and go hire an executive coach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but you helped to change that, and helped, me to become much more steady. And I see you as very steady. That's your energy, like your presence is just very calming and steady. It's, yeah, when you kind of fill up the room with, just a sense of contentment
Mm.
that
Yeah.
all is well.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I do know deep down all is well. And everything is working out the way it needs to work out. I do know that deep down. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So we have two more questions and then we're going to pause and then we'll go into a bonus question. So these last two questions, we need your advice. And the first piece of advice is, what's a book that inspired you to behave or think differently?
A lot of books. I'm always reading. And usually it's the book of the moment, Mary, that is inspiring me. So I'm reading a book by David Brooks. If you know him, he's a journalist. Wonderful, wonderful man who's really transformed his life from being sort of a very conservative journalist on PBS, public broadcasting, political person, to being a loving human being. And so this is the second book of his that I've read, and it's called How to Get to Know a Person. And there's a subtitle to it too. I'm not recalling what that's about. But it's very profound, this book, very profound and very enlightening. And he shares, I think part of what he's sharing is how he's gotten to know himself as a person. And then how do you really get to know a person? Not an easy task. And I don't think we necessarily take the time and the energy to really get to know people, to get to know what makes them tick. And we certainly don't do that typically in the work environment. And we need to. We need to do that. I met with a woman just last week, and we had just talked once on the phone and emailed a few times. And I found out that she's also a fellow Italian, as I am. And so we had a lot to talk about because her parents are from Italy, as mine were from Italy, and just made a beautiful connection because of that and other things. And, I realized that, as I said earlier, that she definitely believes what I believe, because we're about empowering people. And she works with gender work in a very large international NGO, and how to bring gender aspects to all of their projects, which isn't an easy job. It isn't an easy job. But we just had a lovely, lovely time. And so I get to work on a proposal for her, which is awesome.
Great suggestion. I'll put that one on my, all the books that you recommend are always so good. That's really interesting.
It's worth reading, Mary.
Worth a read. Okay. Thank you so much. And the last question before we pause and go to the bonus is, what's your favorite quote or motto and why?
My favorite quote is a quote by Buckminster Fuller. Now, Buckminster Fuller, do you know him, Mary, or know of him?
I heard of the name. Enlighten us.
Yeah. He's passed, a philosopher, visionary, just really someone that thought outside of the box. I actually saw him once speak for a group called the Futurist Society. And I keep meaning to look them up. I keep meaning to see. I think they're still around, and they were headquartered in DC. But I don't want to get this wrong, so I actually printed it out because I love this quote. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. This is the work of today. We cannot change existing realities. We have to build a new model that makes the old model obsolete.
Love that. Absolutely. And if you don't mind me saying, there's a chapter in your book on transforming your mental frame of reference. It's very powerful, very much like that quote. It kind of makes you pause, for a moment. It makes like the hair on your arms, stand up. And you talk about, you're very effusive about a 180-degree radical change and why we have no choice but to do this now. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that we are evolving as a human race, like almost at the speed of light. We're being forced to evolve. And the last 4 or 5 years have given us sort of the impetus and some of the groundwork, and because things are shifting, things are surfacing that were under the covers for a very long period of time. People were saying no more, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. They're saying no more, we're about equality. And that's very, very important. Very, very important. Yeah. We are evolving, some people faster than others, but we have no choice. I mean, just as a human race, we have no choice but to evolve. And climate change is moving that along. There are many, many things that are forcing us to change the way we operate, right? Change the way we operate in the world and the way we live on Mother Earth and yeah.
Thank you for that crescendo. We're going to pause here for just a moment before I have one more question, if I may. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we go into the very last one?
I certainly want to thank you, Mary. Thank you for who you are and for this series. You just bring a light to the world that is so, so needed. And your willingness to meet with people and ask those hard questions. And yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I think the word is namaste. Namaste. Yeah. The light in me honors the light in you.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's a last question. I cannot wait to hear the answer to this, honestly, because it's kind of like the questions that you ask of our PBC, the Purposeful Business Circle. And the question is this: if a higher power, and I put higher power in air quotes, whatever that might be, would let you do, be, have, see anything, and there were no limitations, what would that look like?
It would look like creating these purposeful business incubators in major regions of the world and having abundant funding to do them. Actually having a structure that is self-sufficient, that the center, the incubator, feeds itself, feeds people, feeds the community. It's very much a community-based incubator where everyone is moving up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and becoming more evolved and more enlightened. And it's going to happen, Mary. I've said this for many, many, many years. And at first I would say it and I wouldn't believe it. But over the last probably 5 years, I've gone to believe it. That it's not just words, it's reality. And I'm speaking it into being. We need to speak things into being and visualize them into being. And I'm going to have a lot of fun and be with a lot of fun people that I choose, like you. Like, who do I want to play with?
Thank you. Yeah, it is great fun to play, isn't it?
Yeah, you're here now, Mary. There's no letting go.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. Definitely. Yeah. And it's all about growth. It's all about driving growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you don't mind me saying, I see your incubators as if they've already happened.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's already done in my mind. It's already happened. And it's just like you said, it's just better gets the better it gets.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a way they have, Mary, like the purposeful business circles right now, they're like the incubator. And they are global. We have people from other countries coming in and people living here who from other countries. And we learn a lot from each other. That's very, very intentional, is that it's the East and the West coming together to learn from each other all the time.
Definitely. Yes. The foundation is there. It's just a matter of getting the word out. Yes.
Right.
So yeah. What a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for carving out the time today. Friends, you can find more information about Patricia DiVecchio at her global work at www.internationalpurpose.com, or you can purchase a copy of her book, which is called Evolutionary Work, Unleashing Your Potential in Extraordinary Times. And tell us about the artwork before we go.
Oh, I meant to do that. So this is a piece of art of a client of mine. And, when we were thinking about what to put on the cover, I said, that's it. This is it. And then I have this framed, this piece of art. So it's, and I'm updating this book too. And there's another book that will be coming.
Wonderful. So I'm planting the seed here that when it comes out, perhaps you'll come back on to the great work of your life.
That would be awesome, Mary.
That will be part 2.
Yes. Part 2.
Wonderful. Thank you for spending the time today. Really appreciate you, Patricia.
Thank you. Same.